Alright, hi and welcome to another very exciting episode of the Android video tutorial series. I'm your host, Matthias Reich, and today we're going to take a look at lists. Now, lists are actually a very important and a very versatile concept in Android, and you can of course create lists in many different ways, and you can attach many different data sources to lists. And so today we'll start out really simple with the really basic stuff, and then we will have a more in-depth look in the following tutorials. I guess there will be quite a few tutorials on lists. And yeah, but today we'll start out simple and let's get going. Now, as you can see, I've already created a new empty project. This should look familiar to you. Now we want to make some changes to this new project in order to work with lists rather than with a normal activity. So the way I like to do it in this episode, I like to create a list by creating a class that extends the list activity. I mean, you could create a list inside your main XML layout file, but I want to actually create that list through our Java source code. So let's make some modifications here. Actually, the first thing we want to do is we want to get rid of this line here that says set content view. Just delete that. And also, we can actually delete our main XML since we won't need it for this episode or for this project. So just right-click on your main XML and just choose delete. It'll ask you if you're sure. Just click OK and we're all set. So now another very important thing we have to change in here is we actually want to create a class that extends list activity. So we'll change activity to list activity. Now it gives us an error. That's just because we have to actually import that. And since we don't need that anymore, we can just delete that import for that activity class. Right? Just delete it. And now we're good to go. So the first thing we actually want to do, we want to provide some data to display in our list. Now, I thought it would be fun if we just display a static list of names, which are actually stored inside an array. So that's what we want to create first. Now, since there are quite a few names in that array, I just pre-created it, and to save some time, I just paste it in here. As you can see, there are quite a lot of names, and it's a simple string array. It's called names, and that is initialized with those strings here. So after creating that array, you want to come down here after that call to the super method onCreate. And now the first thing we want to actually create is an adapter for that list. Now imagine an adapter as some kind of interface that maps the underlying data source, which is in our case our array of names, to the actual list items. So in our case, since we're dealing with an array of strings, we want to actually use an array adapter. So we want to create a local variable of the type array adapter. And since we're dealing with a string array, we actually want to data type that array adapter to string. And you do that by just adding that string name in angled brackets after that array adapter, right? So we want to call that variable adapter. And actually we need to import that class array adapter. So that's fine now. And add a new line, and we'll want to type adapter is equal to new array adapter with the type string, open parentheses, and then you will actually want to add the keyword this, because This refers to the actual context, and the first parameter of that constructor from that array adapter is the context. And since we're inside a list activity, we can just pass this as the context, right? So first parameter is this. Now in the second parameter, you actually specify a layout that is used to render the individual list items on screen. So of course you could create your own layout, but for the sake of simplicity, we want to actually use one of Android's predefined list item layouts. Now those list item layouts are actually accessed through that resource class, but instead of using our own resource class, like you would do with r dot and then something, we actually want to use Android's resource class. So we'll type Android dot r dot layout dot, and then you want to pick simple list item 1. All right. And so this will tell our adapter that it should use that layout, simple list item 1, to render each individual list item. Alright, now the third and final parameter is just our data source. And in our case, that's our array with our names. So we just type names. Right, then we can close it off. And we're actually good to go. Now, the final thing we have to do in order to actually create our lists and fill our list with data is we need to assign that adapter to our list activity. So, since we are already in a list activity, because our class extends list activity, we can simply type set list adapter, open parentheses, adapter, close parentheses, semicolon. And then we can save it. And this is actually all there is to do to actually create that list in Android. Alright? So let me quickly sum it all up, because it's very important that you understand the basics of lists, of that concept. So the first thing you want to do, you want to have some sort of data source. In our case, that's a string array of names. And then you want to create an adapter that can actually hold the data you're providing. In our case, we want to create an array adapter because our data source is actually a string array. And then we want to assign the context to that adapter by referring to this. And also we want to assign a layout that should be used to render each individual list item. And finally, we assign the actual data source to that adapter. And the final step is to just assign that adapter to our list activity by calling the setListAdapter method. Alright, so now let's go ahead and actually run our application and see what we've got. Alright, so here we are in Android, and as you can see, all those names that we had in our array are now displayed in our list. And you can actually scroll through that list by clicking and holding the mouse button and then just dragging the list into the direction you want to scroll to. So you can scroll up, down, and so forth. So currently there's not much you can do with those list items. I mean, you can click on them, but nothing happens. So in an upcoming tutorial, we will actually add some functionality to that list. Maybe, like deleting list items and maybe checking on which list item we've clicked and so forth. So I hope you really enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you understood the basic concept of lists. And if you get any questions, please feel free to comment on the blog at www.xtensivearts.com. You can also find the project files there for download, and sharing this episode on your favorite social platform is highly appreciated. And if you got any suggestions, please feel also free to comment on the blog. I really like to hear from you guys, get some feedback, and I hope you found this episode useful, and I'll see you next time.